So you've been able to do some questions. Good. Very nice. So any doubts, any queries, anything that you want to ask? Welcome Supraja to the class. So we were just discussing about how you have been able to, practice some of the questions. Dipali said that she could do some questions from practice manual. I hope you must also have done Supraja. Now today I would be doing some practical questions where we wanted to understand as to how we calculate the cash flows, because we have so far used the cash flows which have been given to us. Now the question is that how do we calculate these cash flows, right? So today I would be starting with some theory, and then I would be coming to the practical questions. Basically, when we talk about theoretical framework, in the last class when I discussed with you the concepts of net present value and IRR, I told you that that till the time the net present value is positive, we can accept the projects, right? You remember that? Till the time the net present value is positive, you can accept the projects, but this is practically something which is not possible, because there can be hundreds of projects which can have a positive net present value, but we have limited resources, and we cannot accept all the projects which have got a positive net present value. So how do we select out of those projects which have got a positive net present value? So for that, you can, one way of looking at things would be that you would say that, ma'am, we can go by the profitability index method. That is fine. But, basically, we call it as a technique of capital rationing. Capital rationing means that you have to choose out of all the projects which have got a positive net present value. You have to choose those projects which have got which will add the most value to the shareholders' wealth. Now, how do we do that? In order to do this, see, there are two ways in which we can look at things. Supposing that, one is that supposing we've got 10 projects which have got a positive net present value. Right? Now, you can go, if you decide to go ahead with these 10 projects, I think it will add value to your portfolio. But then you cannot, because the resources are limited. And the other thing is that, okay, still if you want to go ahead, then your cost of capital will increase. Supposing that you say that, okay, I have got this much limited funds, but still because all these projects have got a positive net present value, I would like to go ahead with the project. So in that situation, you would be arranging funds from outside, or you would be arranging some more funds, and therefore, for every new source or for every new addition to the external funds, your cost of capital will increase, isn't it? If someone has already borrowed 2 times of the equity and he still wants to borrow more, or if he still wants more money, definitely the market will charge a higher price from that particular person. So the marginal cost of capital will increase. You're able to follow what I'm trying to say? So the marginal cost of capital will increase, right? So if the marginal cost of capital will increase, what we will do, we will then start discounting the projects at a higher marginal cost, at a higher cost of capital. And then check as to what are the projects which have got a positive net present value. You're getting my point? So as we keep on increasing the cost of capital, the number of projects which will have a positive net present value will be limited. So then it might be only 2 projects which have got a positive net present value. You're getting my point? So then we have to decide that, okay, with this we can only invest in the 2 projects. So basically, when we talk about capital rationing, the idea is to, because other way is, why do we do not want to go for 10 projects, is okay, we can arrange money. We can arrange money, but still we need time. We need managerial resources to manage 10 projects, which might not be practically possible, right? So therefore we need to actually select out of the 10, 12, 15 net present value projects as to which are the projects which we would like to actually go for, right? This review question I discussed with you in the last class. Good evening, Amrita. These questions we have already discussed, so I'm going a little fast with that. Okay. So here, this is what I was saying, that in case we have got many positive net present value projects, then we can do two things. We can either increase the marginal cost of capital and then select the projects which are left with a positive net present value, or we can go for a capital. We can go for a positive net present. We can go for a capital rationing. Just one second. There's a student who is facing a difficulty in attending the class. Let me just check. Did you face any difficulty in logging into the class today? Anybody? Were you facing difficulties in login? No. Okay, even I did not face any difficulty. Okay, so it was fine. So she would be here. So what I'm trying to say here is that either we increase the marginal cost of capital and then do the net present value and try to find out which all projects have got the positive net present value, or we go for a capital rationing. In capital rationing, we typically set an upper limit on the total capital expenditure that we are ready to make. So we decide that, okay, this is the maximum amount that we are going to invest in the new projects in the next year. So having decided the maximum amount, then we can then because we've got the limited funds, we will have to choose only those projects which are the best, which give us the best value addition to the shareholders' wealth, right? Just a second, huh? It is taking some time to load the slides also today. Just 2 minutes. I'll have to maybe screen share today. Go for a screen sharing only. Okay, so I hope you're able to see the PPT. Yeah. So here we have decided to fix up a budget, and in that budget only we want to decide which are the projects. So capital rationing means that when you fix up the total amount that you're going to invest in the capital projects, the idea is basically, one, we do not want to go for new equity or new loans, because basically this will make our business more riskier, and we will also have to incur a lot of costs, which can be direct costs or indirect costs. So therefore, but the idea is that you increase the cost of capital and then see which all are the viable projects you should do that. Second reason company do not want to go for all the positive net present value projects is that because they do not have enough of, as I said, enough of managerial, marketing and engineering staff to take up all the positive NPV projects. So there we would be discussing about the use of linear programming technique, where we identify which all would be the best projects, which we would be doing maybe in the next class. Basically, and another reason why companies do not go for all the positive net present value projects is that at times companies and the senior management, they realize that many a times when we talk about cash flows are based upon certain forecasts. So that at times senior managers, when they realize that the project managers, they at times they just try to present a very rosy picture, and they try to focus unreasonably high cash flow estimates. So therefore, in those situations, one should what the management should do is that they should tie up the manager's compensation with the subsequent performance of the project. So if the project does not work well, then the manager would also not get his money. Now we would be taking today this kind of review questions, where we would be discussing about how do we decide, how do we finalize, how do we estimate, rather decision and finalizing would be the wrong words, how do we estimate the cash flows of a particular project. So the question is, Global Enterprises Limited, a manufacturer of high quality running shoes. Global Enterprises is a manufacturer of high quality running shoes. Miss Vanita is the president of the company, and she is considering computerizing the company's ordering, inventory and billing procedures. Miss Vanita is thinking that we should computerize some of the procedures. She estimates the annual savings from computerization include a reduction of 10 clerical employees with annual salaries of 40,000 each. So that makes it 4 lakhs. So 10 people would not be required, which have got an annual salary of 40,000 each. So we would be able to save 4 lakh rupees here. 75,000 from reduced production delays caused by raw material inventory problems. 80,000 from lost sales due to inventory stockouts, and 25,000 associated with timely billing procedures. So if they go for computerization, these are the cost savings that they are expecting. The purchase price of the system is rupees 5 lakhs and installation costs are rupees 50,000. So computers will cost them 5 lakh rupees and the installation cost would be rupees 50,000. These outlays will be depreciated on straight line basis to 1,50,000 salvage value, which is also its market value at the end of 5 years. So in 5 years, the value of these computers would become 1,50,000. So the remaining amount you will have to depreciate on a straight line basis for a period of 5 years. Operation of the new system requires 2 computer specialists with a salary of rupees 1,20,000 per person. So while you will remove 10 clerical employees, you would be needing 2 data operators. The salary would be 1,20,000 per person. Also, annual maintenance and operating cash expenses of rupees 1,50,000 are estimated to be incurred. The company's tax rate is 30% and its required rate of return for the project is 12%. Is the situation clear in front of you? It's a very simple situation where we're talking computerization. We would be able to save some of the expenses. Were you able to see the slides, all of you? Were you able to understand the question? Okay. So the situation is clear. The situation is clear now in front of us, that we have a project, and in that particular project we have to buy computers. Now I'm going back to the same screen and trying to understand as to what all are the questions which have been asked over here. So now it says you are required to find the project's initial cash outlay. Now initial cash outlay is clear. What is the meaning of initial cash outlay? Initial cash outlay, what does this mean? I'm not sure whether you are able to type or not in this particular screen share. Initial cash outlay is the initial investment that has to go in this particular project. So who will tell me what is the initial cash outlay over here? What is the initial cash outlay over here? Initial cash outlay in this particular project. Question please. Okay, I'll be just showing you the question. 2 lakh rupees. Why 2 lakh rupees? Initial cash outlay means initial cash expenditure. Computer and its installation. So computer and its installation was given to us as rupees 5,50,000. You can see over here. I think you can click a picture of this screen so that the question, you have the question with you, right? So 5,50,000 is clear. This is the initial cash outlay. Initial cash outlay means initial cash investment. So then whatever it is, it's an annual basis. Now then it goes, find the project's after tax profits and cash flows over its 5 years life. Now this is what is the agenda for today. We want to know the after tax profits and cash flows over its 5 years life. Have you clicked the picture of the question? Even I'll do that. Yups. So if you've clicked the picture of the question, then we move to the Excel sheet. Okay. So the initial cash outlay includes the cost of 5 lakh rupees and the installation expenses of rupees 50,000. That makes it 5,50,000. Now we have been asked to find out projects after tax annual profits. Now, in order to find out the after-tax annual profits, let us just try to understand that there would be a reduction in salaries of 10 clerical staff which was given to us, right? So that means 4 lakh rupees, because the salary of an individual clerk was rupees 40,000 per annum. So we would be saving 4 lakh rupees over here. Then we were given that there would be a reduction in project delays of rupees 75,000. Then we would be able to reduce some lost sales by rupees 80,000, and gains due to timely billing would be rupees 25,000. So in all it is going to be 5,80,000 rupees, right? 5,80,000 rupees is fine with us. Now we had to also find out some expenses which are going to happen. We were told that the initial cash outlay is rupees 5,50,000 and 1,50,000 would be the salvage value. So 5,50,000 minus 1,50,000 is equals to rupees 4 lakhs. This amount has to be depreciated over a period of 5 years. So that makes the per year depreciation to be rupees 80,000. Is it fine with us? The calculation of depreciation, is it fine with us? 5,50,000, which is the initial cash outlay, minus 1,50,000, which is the salvage value, divided by 5 because it's the 5 years period. So depreciation is rupees 80,000. We were also told that there will be an additional employees cost. There would be 2 employees and the salary of each employee would be rupees 1,20,000. So that makes it 2,40,000. And there would be a maintenance cost of rupees 1,50,000. That makes the total cost to be 4,70,000. So profit before tax because of this particular project would be 1,10,000 rupees. Right? Right? We were also given the tax rate of 30%. So we charge 30% on the profit before tax. So profit after tax is 77,000 rupees. Is it clear to everybody? Because I'm not talking about something which is very difficult. I'm talking something which has been given to us in the question. I've just placed it. Okay. Now we have got after tax profits. Right? Just one second. We have got after tax profits. we haven't got the after tax cash flows as yet. So in order to convert the profits into cash flows, what we have to do? We have to add all non-cash items, convert the profits into cash flows. So what do? We add depreciation because it's a non-cash item. So to the profit after tax of 77,000 rupees, I am adding depreciation of rupees 80,000 because it's a non-cash item. So the cash inflows become 1,57,000 rupees. 1,57,000 rupees. This I am going to receive for a period of 5 years, right? So I will multiply this 1,57,000 with what? I will multiply it with the present value factor of annuity at the rate of 12%, which has been given to us as 3.61. So the value of this 1,57,000 rupees, which I am going to receive for a period of 5 years consecutively every year at the rate of 12%, would be 5,65,985. In the 5th year, remember, I am also going to get a salvage value of 1,50,000. I am going to discount it also to the present value by multiplying it with a discounting factor of 0.567, which is present value of rupee 1 at the rate of 12%. So that makes it 85,000. So total cash inflows is 6,51,035. Now this is the total cash inflow. Compare it with the initial cash outlay of 5,50,000. You've got a positive net present value of 1,01,035 rupees. You've got a positive net present value of 1,01,035 rupees. Is the point getting clear? You want to see the screen for some time? You can. I tried to pick up the most simple questions so that the concept becomes absolutely clear, and then we would be going to the advanced level questions. Okay? Is it getting clear? Okay. Then I'll just upload the file again, maybe that it works better. So then we go to the next part of the question. The next part of the question says, we have got the photograph clicked, so let us look at what is the next part of the question. It says, evaluate the project using the net present value method, that we have already done. Evaluate the project using profitability index method. Now that I want you to do. I want you to evaluate the project using the profitability index method. Please do that. Can you do it? Present value of, what was the formula? Okay, just try it. Very good. Inflow divided by present value of cash outflows. Perfect. So you want to see the numbers because you might not have noted it. Yeah. So present value of cash inflow divided by present value of cash outflow is 651,035 divided by 5,50,000. So the profitability index is coming as 1.18. It is coming as 1.18, and we will say that because profitability index is more than 1, the project is viable. The next question is, calculate the project's payback period. No issues. What was the initial cash outlay? That was rupees 5,50,000. Every year you were getting how much cash flow? You were getting 1,57,000, because project's payback period, we have not been told to discount it, so we are taking it at a undiscounted payback period. So 5,50,000 divided by 1,57,000, it gives us 3.50318. So it is 3.50 years. We would be able to get the payback in 3.50 years, right? So now I'm moving to the next question. Let us try to move to the next question, which is the initial. Okay, can we go ahead, right? Question. Okay, now we have got the slides over here, so it is easier for me. This we have already done. So the next question is the initial investment outlay for a capital investment project of Priyanka Limited consists of rupees 100 lakh for plant and machinery and rupees 40 lakh for working capital. Now this is a new thing which has come up over here, working capital. Now whenever we do a capital budgeting decision, working capital has to be invested, isn't it? It has to be an initial investment. But when we talk about the closure of the project, when we say that okay, the project will have a life of 5 years, after 5 years you're going to get your working capital back, right? So we will be investing this 40 lakh rupees right now in business, but after 5 years, if the life of the project is 5 years, we would be getting our money back. Is it fine with us? Is it fine? So now let us look at the numbers. So right now we have to invest 140 lakh rupees. Other details are summarized as follows. Sales 1 lakh units of output per year for rupees 125. So if you invest in this particular machinery, you would be able to get 1 lakh units of output for 5 years. Selling price would be 120 rupees per unit of output, and variable cost would be 60 rupees per unit of output. So your contribution margin would be 60 rupees, but you would also be having fixed overheads excluding depreciation, rupees 15 lakh per year for years 1 to 5. So out of the 60 lakhs, you will have to spend 15 lakhs on the fixed overhead. So your profit margin would be, before taxes, would be 45 lakh rupees. Then we have been given the rate of depreciation on plant and machinery is 25% on written down value method. So whichever method is given to you in the question, in the last question it was straight line method, so we followed straight line method. Here it has been given as a written down value method, so we will follow written down value method. Salvage value of the plant and machinery would be equal to the written down value at the end of year 5. So we will be calculating the written down value, and that will become the salvage value that we will be receiving after 5 years. Applicable tax rate is 40%, time horizon is 5 years. Post-tax cutoff rate is 12%. Post-tax cutoff rate is the hurdle rate or the cost of capital. You are required to calculate the net present value and indicate the financial viability of the project. Now, any questions so far? Is the situation clear in front of you? Any doubts? No. So we move to the solution. You're clear with the question? Okay. So let us first try to find out excluding depreciation. Now depreciation would not be difficult over here because it is simply on a written down value. On 100 lakh rupees you place depreciation at 25% on a written down value method. I'll be showing you the calculations. Don't worry about that. So right now we will first find out the profit margins. Here we have been given that there would be 1 lakh units that you would be able to produce, and you would be able to sell it for rupees 120 per unit. So you would be able to get 120 lakh rupees. From this we reduce the variable cost of 60 lakh rupees and then we get the contribution margin of 60 lakh rupees. Fixed cost excluding depreciation is rupees 15 lakh. So profit before depreciation and tax is 45 lakh rupees. This we could even do verbally, right? So profit before depreciation and tax is rupees 45 lakhs. That is very clear to us. Now let us first find out depreciation, because Ganesh is quite concerned with depreciation. We have been given that the cost of the machine would be rupees 100 lakhs, and every year there will be a 25% depreciation. So in the first year you will charge 25 lakh rupees on depreciation, and the closing balance would be 75 lakh rupees. Then on 75 lakh rupees you will charge 25% depreciation of that will be equal to 18.75 lakh rupees. So the written down value would be 56.25, and so on and so forth. In the last year your written down value is 23 lakh 73,000. So far it's a simple thing, simple calculation of depreciation that you have been doing in accounting and all. Any questions, Ganesh? Or anybody else? Any doubts with respect to depreciation? Right now it is clear. Okay. So you can note down the numbers of depreciation. It is 25 lakh, 18.75, 14.06, 10.55 and 7.91. Now let us find out the cash flows. We have got the profit before depreciation and tax of rupees 45 lakhs, and we've got the figure of depreciation. We've got the rate of tax as well. So let us find out the cash flows. Out of this 45 lakhs, we will reduce depreciation first, as we had done in the last question, 25 lakh, 18.75. This calculation is coming from the working note. And we've got the, after reducing depreciation from the profit before depreciation and tax, we get profit before tax. Right? We get the profit before tax. From the profit before tax, we reduce tax and find out profit after tax. Right? Right? So this is the same calculation that we had done in the last question also. 12 lakhs. Perfect. Now to this, what we have to do, we have to add the depreciation. We have to add depreciation. This is by mistake. It is 25, but by mistake it is written as, it should be 25. Okay? The totals are same, but I think there is a typing mistake over here. So we will add depreciation. Okay? Why are we adding depreciation? Because we want to know the cash flows. And in order to know the cash flows, we have to add depreciation amount to profit after tax. Yes, it's a non-cash item. And in the fifth year, there would also be a salvage value. You would be able to sell the machinery for rupees 23.73 lakhs, which is the written down value. And you would be able to recover the working capital. These are the two more, entries at the end of year 5. Fine. So having done that, we can find out the net cash flows. Year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4 and year 5. And we multiply it with the present value factor at the rate of 12%. Because the figures are different for every year, we cannot multiply it with the present value factor of annuity. Because for annuity purposes, every year we should have the same figure. Because the rate of depreciation was different, because the amount of depreciation was different, it being on written down value method, so the amount of cash flows every year has changed, and because the amount of cash flow has changed every year, we cannot multiply it with the present value annuity factor. Is the difference why we did that in the earlier question and why we are doing this in this question is clear? Is the difference getting clear to you? Annuity means getting the same amount every year. Here we are not getting the same amount. So we multiplied it and we found out the present value of net cash flows. What we have to do, we have to add them all together. 33.04 plus 27.50 plus 23.22 plus 19.84 plus 53.27. If the total addition would be more than rupees 100 and how much? 40 lakhs, then we would say that the project is viable. Let us see. So it is 156.87 lakhs. After adding all 5, we got 156.87 lakhs, which is more than 140 lakhs, and there is an addition of rupees 16.87 lakhs to the net present value. Because it is a positive net present value, the project is said to be financially viable. So do you find, I think this kind of calculations are quite interesting so far? Not very difficult? Right? So, but we are talking about professional level of examination, so let us add some little complication to it. So the first part is that the question is that, okay, all these cash flows are based upon some estimates. We are assuming that the selling price would be 120 lakhs. We are assuming that the variable cost would be 60 lakhs. But market conditions might change because we are talking about future. The machinery has to be bought today, but tomorrow the market price may not be 120 rupees. The variable cost may not be 60 rupees. So let us test the viability of this particular project in different scenarios, right? So in order to do that, let us first assume that if the selling price is decreased by 5%, if the selling price would be decreased by 5%, what would be whether the project would be viable or not? Whether the project would be viable or not. Let us do it. See, if the selling price is reduced by 5%, we need not do the entire calculation again. because if we do that, we would be wasting a lot of our time in examination. Though we can do that, you can change the selling price, you can find out the new contribution margin, and then you can do the entire depreciation additions, and then the entire exercise either you have to do it again. But we do not, as I said, we do not have that much of time. So what we will say that, okay, if the selling price is going to decrease by 5%, every year what is going to be the loss? Let us try to understand what is going to be the loss every year. So 5% multiplied by 120 on 1 lakh units, right? This is going to be your loss. 5% of 120 is rupees 6, multiplied by 1 lakh is rupees 6 lakhs. But if your income is going to reduce by 6 lakh rupees, your tax liability is also going to reduce by 40% on that. You're getting my point? Because if I am not going to have a higher selling price, my income is going to reduce. And if my income is going to reduce, the taxation also has to reduce. Other things would remain the same. The variable cost would remain the same. The depreciation would remain the same. But the tax liability will get reduced. Agreed? Right? So therefore, by reducing the income by 6 lakhs rupees, the net effect which will come, because the tax liability will also reduce, so the net impact that will come would be of rupees 3,60,000 on a per annum basis. Are you able to follow what I am trying to say, or no? Okay. Now if this 3,60,000 rupees is going to be a loss every year, because it is the same amount, so I can multiply it with the present value annuity factor. Why should I do the calculation multiplying it again and again? So I multiply it with the present value annuity factor for 5 years at the rate of 12%, which is 3.6048. So that means that the total loss that is going to happen would be in the net present value terms would be of rupees 12.98 lakhs. Would be of rupees 12.98 lakhs. Decrease in selling price could lead to more demand and sales. No, but the machine has got a maximum level of production. Right? We're talking about right now one machine. So, and we're saying that the machine would be able, so that kind of a thing, again, second thing, because we have a production capacity. Second thing is that we would be only talking about the numbers which have been given to us, because more sales and more demand has not been given to us. So we are not talking about that kind of a scenario right now. Fine? If it would have been given to us, we would have added that to our calculations. So 12.98 lakh rupees would be the loss. Fine with us. Now our net present value was somewhere close to 16 lakhs. 16.87. Even if we lose 12.98 lakhs, still the project is viable. Right? Because still we have got a positive net present value of rupees 3 point some lakhs. So still the project is viable. So that means by reducing the selling price by 5%, there is a total decline of 76.94% in the net present value. So we can still go ahead with the project even if we have got a reduction in the selling price. Even if we are able to sell it at 114 rupees, we would be able to make this project a viable project. Fine. Let us go to the second assumption, which says that let us assume that the selling price does not decrease, but the variable cost increases by 10%. So there are two different assumptions. Okay. Let us assume that we would be able to sell at 120 rupees, but we would not be able to procure our raw material at rupees 60. In that situation, again, your cost price will increase by 6 rupees. Fine. Your cost price will increase by 6 rupees. Now, when your cost price will increase by 6 rupees, in that situation, again, because the cost has increased, so the tax liability will reduce. Whether the cost increases or the sales decreases, the ultimate impact is on the net income. The ultimate impact is on the net income, right? Right. So therefore, therefore the tax liability is definitely going to decrease. So there would be a 10% increase in variable cost, means 6 rupees on 1 lakh units. That is again 6 lakh rupees. But because of taxation, you are going to reduce the tax liability by 40%. So that would make the increase in variable cost after tax in terms of cash flows rupees 3,60,000. Again, because 3,60,000 multiplied with the present value annuity factor at the rate of 12% for 5 years, again it is 12.98 lakhs. So it's similar to whether the variable cost decreases, whether the variable cost increases by 10% or the selling price decreases by 5%. We are okay with any one of the two. If both the things are going to happen together, the project will become unviable. Fine? Fine? Okay. So can I move to the next question? I hope it is not becoming very heavy for you. Perfect. So then we go to the next question. Here we have been given a replacement decision, a problem relating to replacement decision. Now what is it? It is saying that a product is currently manufactured on a machine that is not, abhi tak whatever we had discussed was that we were talking about, in case of computers, we were talking about new computers being brought in. In the case of last decision, we were talking about new machinery. Here we are going to talk about a situation where we are already using a machine and the machine has not been fully depreciated. We've been using it now, but we want to replace that machine and buy a new machine. Those kinds of situations also do arise in business. Those kind of opportunities do arise in business. So a product is currently being manufactured on a machine that is not fully depreciated for tax purposes and has got a book value of rupees 80,000. The machine has got a book value. So what is book value? You know what is the meaning of book value? Come on, tell me. What is book value? Actual cost after depreciation. After all the depreciation that has happened over the years, what is the value as per books of accounts is rupees 80,000. The machine was purchased for rupees 2,40,000 20 years ago. So in 20 years we have depreciated it to rupees 80,000. The cost of the product is as follows. Now the product which is being manufactured on this particular machine, the costing of that is, the product involves direct labor of rupees 28 per unit, indirect labor of rupees 14 per unit, other variable overheads of rupees 10.50 and fixed overheads of rupees 17.50. So the total per unit cost is coming as 70 rupees. The question goes further. In the past year, 10,000 units were produced. Okay, so we have been given the number of units which have been produced. It is expected that with suitable repairs, the old machine can be used indefinitely in future. If you repair the machine, you can use it for a very long period of time. The repairs are expected to average rupees 75,000 per year. Now, this is the current situation. We have been given an alternative. An equipment manufacturer has offered to accept the old machine as trade-in for a new equipment. There's an equipment manufacturer who says that you give me the old machine and I'll give you a new one. The new machine would cost rupees 5,20,000 before allowing for rupees 1 lakh for the old equipment. So the cost price of the machine is 5,20,000, but he would be giving us a discount of rupees 1 lakh because we would be giving him the old machine. So that will cost us, that the effective cost for us would be 4,20,000 rupees. The project costs associated with the new machine are as follows. Because the new machine will come, so direct labor cost will reduce to 14 rupees. Indirect labor will increase to 21 rupees. Other variable overheads would become 7 rupees and fixed overheads would become 22.75. So the per unit cost would become 64.75. The situation is clear? You want to click a picture? You can. We move to the further story. The very first line. Product is currently being manufactured on a machine that is not fully depreciated for tax purposes. That's what you want to ask? Yeah, so the machine is not like, we can still claim depreciation on the machine. That is what they want to say. We can still claim depreciation on this machine because depreciation is a very important aspect while doing the calculations. Okay. Many a times what happens that you've got a book value of the machine, but the machine for income tax purposes, because why are we claiming why are we doing calculations with respect to depreciation? It being a non-cash item, we still include it in our calculations because we get a tax benefit of depreciation. Right? So that is why the first line is here. Got it? The complete depreciation, additions, and first the reduction and then the addition is to just take the tax benefit on depreciation. So that is why this particular line is here. Now we go further with the question. The fixed overhead, because in the question we have been given the fixed overhead costs, right? You can see 22.75 with the new machine and 17.50 with the old machine. Now the fixed overhead costs are allocations for other departments plus depreciation of the equipment. So this fixed overhead cost includes depreciation also, and it includes the allocations of other departments. Now when we talk about allocations of other departments, whether you keep on using the first machine or you use the new machine, the other department cost is not going to change. So it's only the depreciation which has changed, and that is why the fixed overheads have changed, right? The old machine can now be sold for rupees 60,000 in the open market. So if you decide to sell the machine in the open market, you can get 60,000 rupees. The new machine has an expected life of 10 years and salvage value of rupees 20,000 at that time. The current corporate income tax rate is assumed to be 50%. For tax purpose, cost of new machine and the book value of old machine may be depreciated in 10 years. Now it's very clear that even if the old machine can be with you for an unlimited period of time, but for tax purposes you can claim depreciation on it for a further period of 10 years only, right? The minimum required rate is 10%. It is expected that the future demand of the product will stay at 10,000 units per year. So whether you keep the new machine or you keep the old machine, the demand of the product would remain only 10,000 units per year. So the number of units will not change. The present value of an annuity of rupee 1 for 9 years at 10% discount factor is 5.759. The present value of rupee 1 received at the end of 10th year at 10% discount factor is 0.386. Should the new equipment be purchased, assume no capital gain taxes. Is the question clear? Now the question has got a lot of information. As I said that, I would not leave it to be such a simple thing, but as we move further with the questions, the amount of complication has to increase. So the situation is clear in front of us. We would try to look at how do we have to solve it. Now before we go further, just try to think that how are we going to solve it. It's a case of incremental incremental cost and incremental benefit, right? So we will be talking on those lines now. We're not talking about the cash flows associated with, because we do not have the selling price. You can see here, we do not have the selling price anywhere. We just have got the two kinds of costs. So what we should do is, we should try to compare the two alternatives, and the number of units also remain the same. So in order to reduce our calculations, what we can do, we can simply do an incremental cost. I have got the question here as well, so that you can see it as and when required for your references, for your reference purposes. Now, we have been told that the new machine will cost rupees 5,20,000. But and you will be, because you would be buying the new machine, so you would give your old machine, because if you sell it in the market, you're just getting 60,000 rupees. So it is better to take the exchange offer and give it and get a trade-in value of rupees 1 lakh. So the cost will be rupees 4,20,000, which is the cash cost, right? This is the cash cost of the new machine, because another 1 lakh rupees you are giving But when you have to charge depreciation, the question comes, will you be charging depreciation on 5,20,000 or 4,20,000? Just think for 2 minutes and then give me the answer. In this particular case, will you be charging depreciation on 5,20,000 or 4,20,000? Supraja says 4,20,000. And anybody else? Ganesh says 5,20,000. Now both of you please give me reasons for the same. Because it costs the same. Yes. Basically, when we do the fixed cost accounting, when we do the fixed asset accounting, whether you pay in cash or you pay in kind. Yaps. No, it's not even the discount. You have not paid in cash, you have paid in kind. But the value of the asset would be rupees 5,20,000. You're getting my point? So the book value of the asset is rupees 5,20,000. Is it getting clear, Supraja, what I'm trying to say? Right? So therefore, depreciation would be on 5,20,000, but the cash cost of the machine is rupees 4,20,000. Now going further, we have to calculate depreciation. Now on the new machine, we have to find out depreciation. We have been told that there would be 20,000 rupees would be the realizable value of the new machine after 10 years, right? So, and we have to charge depreciation unless it is given to us in the question. We would not charge depreciation on written down value method unless it is given to us in the question. So, to an extent possible, we will use straight line method because it is simpler and easy to calculate. So 5,20,000 minus 20,000 divided by 10 is 50,000 rupees of depreciation on the new machine. And on the old machine, because the book value is 80,000 rupees and it would be fully depreciated in 10 years with no salvage value, so the depreciation on the old machine would be rupees 8,000. So the incremental or the differential depreciation between the two machines is rupees 42,000. Clear? Clear? Any doubts? Anybody? Anybody who's got any doubts? If you're not able to write when I am doing the screen share, you can ask me right away. I am calculating the incremental depreciation because I want to see that can we share depreciation which has been trade off. I did not get it. Can we charge depreciation which has been trade off? I am talking about that is something different. See, the thing is that right now, that let us just understand the two situations differently. One is the option 1 where you trade off the machine. Second option is you continue with the machine. Now I am trying to see the difference between the two. One is that I am continuing with the machine. Second is I am buying a new machine and trading it off. They're two different situations. If I am trading off, then my depreciation would be 50,000 rupees. If I am not trading off, then my depreciation would be 8,000 rupees. Right? Right? So if in these two situations, what is the difference? It is of 42,000 rupees. You're getting my point? Right? I have two different alternatives. How depreciation 50,000. See, we have been given that the new machine would cost 5,20,000 rupees here. Right? And we have also been given that the salvage value of the new machine is rupees 20,000. This you can see over here. And the life of the new machine is 10 years. So 5,20,000 minus 20,000 divided by 10 gives us 50,000 rupees. Right, Amrita? Okay. Now we again go to the question. Now, as we have done the differential calculation of depreciation, so we would be doing the differential calculation of all the costs. We've been given variable cost on the product. The variable cost of the new machine is 4,20,000, and variable cost of the old machine is 5,25,000. And if we continue with the old machine, there would also be a repair of 75,000 rupees per annum. So the new machine's cost would be, if we continue with the new machine, we will be incurring 6 lakh rupees as a variable cost. But if you buy the new machine, then the cost gets reduced to 4,20,000. So you are able to save 1,80,000 rupees if you in the variable cost if you buy the new machine. Fine. How did we get this 42 and 5250? Let me explain that to you. 42 is 28. 42 is 28 plus 14 plus 10.5. This is the old machine. 28 rupees direct labor, 14 rupees indirect labor, and other variable overhead of 10.5. But if you take the new machine, the direct labor is 14, indirect labor is 21, and other variable overhead is 7. So that makes it 42, right? So variable cost in case of new machine is 42, and variable cost in case of old machine is rupees 52.50 plus 75,000 rupees as annual repair. So differential savings that we are getting in variable cost is rupees 1,80,000. You would say that, ma'am, why you have not taken the fixed overhead? Because it was given to us in the question that fixed overhead includes depreciation and allocations from other departments. So I would be simply taking depreciation because allocations from other departments would remain the same. So then these are the savings of 1,80,000 rupees. But against these savings, my depreciation has increased by 42,000 rupees. So my taxable savings would be 1,38,000, right? So 1,80,000 is my variable cost saving. From this we reduce increase in depreciation. So my taxable savings are 1,38,000. 50% tax rate has been given to me. So we have got income after tax of rupees 69,000. Now I'm again adding back the depreciation because this is income after tax. I want to know cash flows after tax, so I will have to add back depreciation. So the cash flow per annum for 9 years would be 1,11,000 rupees. Will be 1,11,000 rupees. I multiply this 1,11,000 rupees with present value annuity factor at the rate of 10%. 10% was the rate for 9 years, which was given to me as 5.759. So the value is coming as 6,39,000. For the 10th year, I would also be getting the 20,000 rupees as salvage value. So that makes it 1,31,000. I multiply 1,31,000 with the present value factor at the rate of 10% for 10 years is 0.386. So the present value is coming as 50,566 for the cash flow at the end of 10th year. So the total present value of cash flow is 6,89,000, against which I am investing 4,20,000 rupees. So my net present value is 2,69,815. Net present value being positive, the new equipment should be purchased. Right? So you just have to go step by step. Once you have got the income after tax, I think uske baad to things are settled. Then you simply have to add back the depreciation, multiply it with the present value factor, and then reduce the cash outlay and get the net present value. Before that, yes, you have to put in some effort and find out the depreciation. You have to find out the profits and then add the depreciation. Any doubts? Any queries on this particular question? Please go ahead. Before you ask the question, I'll give one thing, that at times the students, they decide to do the solutions like they want to solve for one machine and then they want to solve for the other machine, and then find out that, you know, whether it is beneficial or not. I think that is also not a wrong thing to do. The departmental thing and the cost of old machine 60,000 rupees. Okay. See, if it says that the old machine can be sold now for rupees 60,000 in the open market. If you do not go for replacement, you can sell the old machine for 60,000 rupees. Why that has been given? Because in general, whenever you take a capital budgeting decision, this is the kind of information that you look for. Even if you would be choosing, like supposing this amount would have been more than rupees 1 lakh, in that situation you would have sold the machine in the open market, realized the value from there, and purchased the machine from the equipment supplier at 5,20,000 rupees. You're getting my point? So this is something which is this kind of an information is bringing you closer to the facts. That is why 60,000 has been given. Second is the fixed overhead costs are allocations for other departments plus depreciation. This is something which is very, very clear. Fixed overhead costs are allocations of other departments, means that there are other departments who are working for producing these 10,000 units. There are people who are getting salaries. You've got some clerical staff, you've got some electricity bills coming, you've got some office expenses. Whether you buy a new machine or you continue with the old machine, those expenses are going to remain the same. So when you're doing the incremental analysis, then those expenses, because there is no change, so the increment is 0. But there is a change, because if you look at the numbers, it shows that there is a change in the fixed overhead cost, which has increased from 17.50 to 22.75. Now the question comes that if it is a fixed overhead cost, then it should not increase, because depreciation has been included in it. That is why it has been increased. So because we are doing the depreciation calculation separately, we can simply avoid it in the calculations. That is why the statement was there, that though the number has been given to you, but it is not relevant because you're doing the depreciation calculations, which is actually the increment. Right? Now why these are given? Because basically when you are in the real life situation, the numbers are available to you in this format only. Generally, if you are in a real life situation, you would be getting these kinds of numbers only. So therefore the question has been framed as in this manner. Can we move to the next question, or any doubts, any other questions? But we've not taken 60,000 anywhere. Yes, we have not taken 60,000 anywhere, because just try and understand this, Ganesh, that it's a simple thing. A few days ago, my washing machine went bad. I went to buy a new washing machine, and the person said that if you want a replacement, like if you want a trade-in, we'll be giving you 500 rupees for your old machine. I said, no, I do not want to trade in, because why will I give my old machine for 500 rupees? I will rather sell it on OLX or something, and I would be getting it I would be able to get some 2,500 rupees for that. You're getting my point? So basically, whenever you want to go in for a trade-in, you will always be trying to find out what is the market value. If the trade-in is more than the market value, you will go for trade-in. If the trade-in will not be more than market value, then you would rather sell it in the market and buy the new product. This has been just given to you just to make you familiar with the real life situation. Right? Basically, the idea is to give you a situation and not to give you a question. This is called the difference between a problem and a case study. This is a case study, and the earlier question that we did was a problem. Right? In a case study, a lot of information would be there, and all information is relevant for that matter, isn't it? Even the 60,000 is relevant. Though we have not used it in our calculation, but it is relevant. Now we go to the next question. One more. This would be the last one. No, if time permits, then I will take one more. It says an iron ore company. This is like when we have to buy a new equipment. Just try to understand a very interesting situation here. An iron ore company is considering investing in a new processing facility. The company extracts ore from an open pit mine during a year 1 lakh tons of ore is extracted. In 1 year, 1 lakh tons of ore is extracted, and the company is planning to go for a new processing facility. If the output from the extraction process, now what is the output from the extraction process? This is this 1 lakh tons which is extracted. This is the output of extraction, right? If the output from the extraction process is sold immediately upon removal of dirt, rocks and other impurities, when you extract iron ore by way of mining, a lot of dirt and other rocks and other impurities also come along with it. So you have to remove those dirt and rocks and other impurities, and then you have to sell it. If you do that, a price of rupees 1,000 per ton of ore can be obtained. The company has estimated that its extraction cost amounts to 70% of the net realizable value of the ore. So you get 1,000 rupees per ton, and 70% of 1,000 rupees per ton goes in the cost of extraction. So you are able to earn 300 rupees per ton, right, on 1 lakh tons. Is the question getting clear? So far the facts are clear? Okay. Now, as an alternative to selling all the ore at rupees 1,000 per ton, it is possible to process further 25% of the output. So they want to now test an alternative that if they do not sell complete 1 lakh tons at rupees 1,000 per ton, rather they sell only 75,000 tons, and remaining 25%, that is 25,000 tons, they can do some processing. Now what is it? The additional cash cost of further processing would be rupees 100 per ton. So if they do that, they will have to incur some more cost of rupees 100 per ton. The processed ore would yield 80% final output and can be sold at rupees 1350 per ton. So if you process 25,000 tons, you would be able to get 20,000 tons, which is 80% of 25,000, and you would be able to sell it at rupees 1350 per ton. So the situation is getting clear. You would be selling 75,000 tons as it is. Remaining 25%, that is 25,000 tons, you would be processing it further. And for the purpose of processing it, you would be incurring a cost of rupees 100, and it would yield a final output of 80%. So when you process 25,000 tons, 80% of it would come back to you. 20% will go in waste. And this 80% can be sold at rupees 1350 per ton. For additional processing, the company would have to install equipments costing rupees 100 lakhs. So new equipment would be required because you have to process it. So you've got an recurring cost of rupees 100 per ton, and you've got a fixed cost of rupees 100 lakhs which will go in equipments. The equipment is expected to have a useful life of 5 years with no salvage value. The company follows the straight line method of depreciation. Additional working capital requirement is estimated at rupees 10 lakhs. So 100 lakhs would be the machinery cost, and working capital estimated is 10 lakhs, which can be recovered back after 5 years. The company's cut-off rate for such investments is 15%. Assume corporate tax rate at the rate of 30%, including education, cess and surcharge, should the company install the equipment for further processing of iron ore. So the situation is clear. Should we buy the new machine and process it further, or should we not? Right? So we move to solution. Hanji. So the first thing we have to find out is the initial cash outlay. Cost of equipment is rupees 100 lakhs, right? And there is an additional working capital requirement of rupees 10 lakhs. So the total makes it 110 lakhs of initial cash outlay, right? We have been given that the yearly extraction, let us just write out the facts. Yearly extraction at present is 1 lakh tons of iron ore. The present price is rupees 1,000 per ton and extraction cost is 70%. In the proposed scheme, We are going to further process 25% of output. The cost of processing would be rupees 100 per ton, yield would be 80%, and the proposed price would be 1350 rupees per ton. New equipment would cost rupees 100 lakh, life of the equipment would be 5 years, additional working capital required is 10 lakhs, cost of capital is 15% and tax rate is 30%. Now if possible, please mention these kinds of numbers for every question that you get. Why we write these numbers is because this gives you a fair idea as to what exactly is the data which is in front of you, right? If possible, write down this kind of an information for every question. Now, we have been given a situation, 110 lakhs if you invest, what can you get? You will be able to get an incremental revenue because 1000 rupees per ton you are otherwise also able to sell, but by further processing it, you would be able to sell it for 1350 per ton. But the number of, the tons would reduce from 25,000 to 20,000 tons. So the incremental revenue would be 350 multiplied by 20,000, that is rupees 70 lakhs. You would be able to get 70 lakh rupees more. But what are the incremental costs? There would be a processing cost of rupees 100 on 25,000 tons because output is 20,000, but the processing cost would be on every unit of input, right? So we will have 25 lakhs going in processing cost. Plus we will be also having a depreciation which is in the straight line method with no salvage value. So on the complete 100 lakhs you will have a depreciation for 5 years, so that makes it 20 lakh rupees per annum. So 45 lakh rupees are your total incremental costs. So the earnings before taxes are going to be 25 lakh rupees. Let us find out the tax liability at the rate of 30%, which is going to be 7,50,000 rupees. So the earnings after taxes would be 17,50,000 rupees. To this, what we do? We will add back depreciation of rupees 20 lakhs. So earnings or the cash flows after tax is 37,50,000 rupees per annum for a period of 5 years. And in the 5th year, you would also be getting your additional working capital back. So 37,50,000 multiplied by present value annuity factor at the rate of 15% for 5 years is 3.3522. So you get 1,25,70,750, and you would also be getting the working capital recovery of rupees 10 lakhs at the present value factor at the rate of 15% is 0.4972. So your net present value is coming as 20,67,950 because the net present value is positive. So we recommend that the new equipment should be purchased and the processing should be done, right? So basically in this kind of questions, at times the challenge becomes to understand the question rather than solve. Kinds of questions, when the challenge is to understand the question, I generally suggest, please don't mind if you have to read the question 5 times. Unless the facts of the question would be clear, the solution would never ever be correct. So even if you have to study the facts again and again, please note down. In this particular question, I had noted down the facts because these kinds of questions are such where if you do not note down the facts, you may commit mistake here or there. So make sure that you understand the facts very well and then only try to solve the question. Any questions on this? Any doubts? Is it clear? Perfect. Very good. So I hope that it's actually not the method of question which changes a lot. It is the question itself, the way it is presented to you in a complicated manner, which adds to the calculations. Now moving away from the computation of cash flows, the questions are tricky. Yes, of course, at times they are, and because it's a new situation which comes in front of you every time, so take it very, 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 very peacefully. At times the students just panic out while they look at a question. Then it becomes difficult. just read the question again and again, unless till the time you do not understand it correctly. And many a times some of the students even ask the examiner the meaning of a particular word. Like if you're not able to understand the meaning of a particular word, which can be extraction cost, assuming what is extraction, though it's a very simple English, but I'm just saying you can even ask somebody what is extraction, right? So English is not a problem. The problem is to understand the technique. So if you are just trapped with the language of the question and any typical word, if you're not able to understand, you can even ask the examiner that what is the meaning of this. If the examiner knows it, he will be able to tell you. But if he also does not know it, then you will have to actually put in your own mind. And that is also possible if you read a lot, then the language of the question will also become simpler to you. It's just comprehension, which you studied it in your middle classes like 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. You do a lot of comprehension. Why do you do a lot of comprehension? Because that increases your ability to understand what is written, right? So in the examination, if you really want to understand the question well, improve upon your reading habits. Whether you read your subject or you read a novel or you read anything, but just keep on reading things, because the more you read, the better is your understanding about anything which is written. Now, one last question before we close for today. This is not on the basis of cash flows. The cash flows have actually been given to you. It says Simon Limited is considering 2 mutually exclusive projects. The projects are mutually exclusive. So if we will accept project A, we will not accept project B. Investment outlay of both the projects is rupees 5 lakhs. So the same amount has to be invested, and each is expected to have a life of 5 years. So that is very clear that we do not have to go for annualized equivalency and all that, because the cost of the project and the life of the project all are same. Under 3 possible situations, their annual cash flows and probabilities are as under. Because we're talking about a future, so the cash flow may differ. If the situations would remain good, project A will give you a cash flow of rupees 6 lakhs per annum. Project B will give you a cash flow of rupees 5 lakhs per annum. If the situations would be normal, project A will give and project B both will give you 4 lakh rupees. If the situations would be worse, project A will give you a cash flow of rupees 2 lakhs. Project B will give you a cash flow of rupees 3 lakhs. If the cost of capital is 7%, which project should be accepted? Consider the risk parameter also in decision making and explain with workings. Now, if I look at the numbers initially, I can say that, total is 6 plus 4, 10 plus 2, 12, and 5 plus 4, 9 plus 3, 12. In both the situations, the total is coming close to 12. And you can see the more variance is in project A, because in good situations, it moves from 4 to 6. And in bad situations, it goes from 4 to 2. But in case of project B, there is a variance of only rupees 1 lakh. So project B has got a lesser variance, it should be less risky. But because we have to solve the question, we have to do we have to use a technique. So we will be using the technique and trying to estimate the cash flows. So whenever we have been given certain probabilities, what we should do, in order to find out the average, what you should do, you should multiply the numbers with their probabilities. So the expected cash outflow, because we do not know whether the situation will be good, normal or worse, so we have to take one number in order to do the calculation. We cannot take all the 3 numbers and do the calculations, because it would lead us nowhere, right? So let us try to find out that what would be the most likely, the most probable kind of a situation. So we multiply the probabilities with the project's cash flows. So 6 multiplied by 0.3 plus 4 multiplied by 0.4 plus 2 multiplied by 0.3. Right? You are able to follow what I am trying to say. We are trying to find out the average cash flow. Right? How do we find out average? We add all the 3 together and divide it by 3. But here we are not dividing it by 3 because probabilities have been given to us. So what we are doing, we are multiplying it with their probabilities and finding out the expected cash outflow. So 3 multiplied by 6, 4 multiplied by 4, 0.4 multiplied by 4 and 0.3 multiplied by 2, and then add them all three together. So you are getting a probable an expected cash flow of rupees 4 lakhs. Expected cash flow of rupees 4 lakhs for 5 years, right? So present value of expected cash flow of rupees 4 lakhs for 5 years. For that you multiply it with the present value factor of rupees 1 at the rate of 7% for 5 years, which is 4.100. So the present value of expected cash flow is coming as 16.40. The initial cost was 5 lakh rupees, so the net present value is 11 lakh 40,000 rupees. I'm not doing the variance analysis at present. I'll be doing it after another 2 minutes. Let me go to project B. Project B also we have been given probabilities and cash flows, so we multiply the probabilities with the cash flows there also. Find out the expected cash flow. By chance the expected cash flow is 4 lakhs there also. So I multiply again with the present value factors at the rate of 7% for 5 years, and same net present value is coming in both the projects. Now the question comes that when the net present value is same, which particular project should I actually choose? Because they are mutually exclusive, so I cannot choose both of them. It says consider the risk parameter also in decision making. So let us now look at the risk, and the best measure of risk is standard deviation. The best measure of risk is standard deviation. Did I discuss these concepts with you in the initial classes? What is average and what is standard deviation? Did I discuss this? What is mean and what is variance? Have I discussed these concepts with you? I'm not getting any response. I haven't. Okay. Now that's my mistake. Let me first do that and then I'll be going to this kind of a calculation. Okay. Now if, let me just forget about the probabilities. Just make it all clear. If we are given that in a class there are 5 students, and the height of, or let's take the weight of those 5 students are 40 kgs, 42 kgs, 44 kgs, 38 kgs and 41 kgs. Let me make it 42 again. So, and you're told to find out the average weight of the students in the class. Can you find it? Can you find the average weight of the students in the class? (412) divided by 5. Okay, it's 41.2. Perfect. So how did you do that? You simply added them all together and divided it by 5. Right? Now, I change the question further. If I say in a class 1/5 of the students have got 40 kgs weight, 2/5 of the students have got 30 kgs weight, and another 2/5 have got 35 kgs as weight. Can you give me what is the average weight of the class? Can you give me? Yes or no? If you can't, then also you have to tell me. I'll be telling you the method. No. So how should you do it? You should simply multiply 1 by 5 by 40. So 1 by 5 multiplied by 40 is equals to 8. 2 by 5 multiplied by 30 is equals to 12. And 2 by 5 multiplied by 35 is equals to 14. And then add all the 3 together. So the average weight of this class would be 20 plus 14 is equals to 34 kgs. Right? So this is how, because This is rather an easier method, isn't it? This is an easier method to find out the average. Okay. Similarly, what we can do is, if we have been given that there are 30% chances. Now 1 by 5 can also be written as 20%. 2 by 5 can also be written as 40%. Right? So 20% of the students have got 40 kgs of weight, 40% of the students have got 30 kg of weight, and 40% of the students have got 35 kgs of weight. Can you find out the average weight? We have been able to do it. Right? Similarly, when the probabilities are given to us, we multiply the probability. What is this? You know, in this kind of a situation, we have been given the exact number. But when we are looking at the future kind of a situation, we would be given probabilities. So when the probabilities will be given to us, there are 30% chances that the cash flows would be 40 rupees or 40 lakh rupees. And there are again 30% chances that it would be 60 lakh rupees, and there are again 40% chances that it would be 20 lakh rupees. We can simply multiply the probabilities with the cash flows and find out what is going to be the average or the expected cash flow. Are you able to follow what I'm trying to say? Okay. Now this is something that we try to understand with the help of the concept of probabilities and the statistical concepts of mean. And now, why do we find out average? Why do we find out average? Because that gives us a fair idea, right? That gives us a fair idea. That is why we find out average. In the first situation, you told me that the average weight was coming as 41.2 kgs. Right? In the second case, when we calculated, the average weight was coming as 34 kgs. Right? Now, when you look at 41.2 kgs, there you see that in most of the cases, all the weights are close to 41.2, whether it is 40 or 42. There is a deviation between 44 and 41.2. So there is one student who is overweight and one student which is underweight. Right? But most of the students are close to 41, 42. Fine. In the second case, when we try to calculate, the average weight is coming as 34. And there is 1/5 of the class which has got 40 kgs of weight. There is again another 40% of the class which has got a weight of 30 kgs, and there is only 40% of the class which is very close to the average. You're getting my point? No. Basically what we are trying to see is that there is a lot of deviation from the average in case of the second situation as compared to the first situation. There is a lot of deviation in the second situation. So this average which we are getting is not close. It is not close to all the numbers. Are you able to follow what I'm trying to say? Because see, the average, if you have to take the averages, the average of 10 and 100 is also 55, and the average of 50 and 60 is also 55. If in a country there are two people, one is earning 10 rupees, another is earning 100 rupees, and we say that the average income in the country is rupees 55, and there's another country in which one person is earning 50 rupees, another person is earning 60 rupees, and we say average income is 55, I think the second country has got a better standard of living, or a better, than as compared to country number one. You're able to follow what I'm trying to say? You're able to follow? Now, so that means that there has to be some number which should tell me whether This average which I am getting is giving me the right, is giving me the confidence enough to rely on the number or not. There has to be some number, there has to be some calculation which should show me that whether this average is reliable or not, or whether, how much is deviation from the average. So this particular calculation is known as variance or standard deviation. What is the standard deviation? How much is the data varying from average? Are you able to follow what I'm trying to say? So this variance is measured by a formula which is called x minus x bar. I'm not able to put the bar on the top of it, divided by n. X minus x bar divided by n, sigma x minus x bar divided by n. Sigma is summation. Now why am I writing this mathematical equation? See, the thing is, here x would be the various data. 50, 60 is x, and x bar is the average. So in the first case, if I say 10 minus 55 plus 100 minus 55 divided by 2. So this is how much? This is minus 45. No, it has to be 100. 10 minus 55 is minus 45, and 100 minus 55 is plus 45. No, I think I'm committing a mistake over here. Okay, let me do it again. And in case of the second situation, it is 50 minus 55 plus 60 minus 55. No, it is again. Maybe that I am committing a mistake over here. I'll have to check it. Maybe that it is not working in two numbers. Let me go here. Because this will give the results better. 40 minus 41.2, that is minus 1.2, plus 42 minus 41.2 is plus 0.8, plus 44 minus 41.2 is 2.8, plus 38 minus 41.2 is कितना होगा? Minus 3.2 plus 42 minus 41.2 is plus 0.8. Whatever. So this divided by n is the total numbers, right? This gives us the standard deviation. This is the formula for standard deviation. I may be using the formula somewhere wrong, I think, if the numbers are not getting correctly. So what we have to do is we have to find out the standard deviation. And in this particular case also, we've used the same kind of a concept to find out a standard deviation. How do we find out standard deviation? The average is 4 lakhs. The mistake that I was doing is x minus x bar ka square hona chahiye. Sorry. Here what we have to do is, it is x minus x bar square divided by n. Okay, now it is correct. So now we can solve it. 10 minus 55 is 45 square plus 45 square divided by 2 will give you the standard deviation of this particular numbers, right? So it would be 45 into 45 plus 45 into 45 divided by 2. This is the formula for standard deviation, right? You want to find it out? Are you there? I'm getting absolute silence in the class. 45 का square is equals to 2025, right? So it is variance. So the variance of this data set is equals to 2025. And what is standard deviation? Standard deviation is equals to square root of variance. So the standard deviation of this data set is 45. So there is from the mean, you can go 45 above or 45 down. If you can look at the numbers, so this particular variance is able to give me the answer. If you look at the variance of the second situation, it is 10 multiplied by 10 is equals to 100 plus 100 divided by 2. So the variance of the second data set is equals to 100, and the standard deviation of the second data set is equals to 10. So what we want to say is that even if the average in both the cases is 55, even if the average in both the cases is 55, but because standard deviation in the first case is 100 and in the first case is 45 and the standard deviation in the second case is 10, we will say that the second situation is more close to mean. There is less variance in the second situation as compared to the first situation. Are you able to follow now what I'm trying to say? I'm sorry for that mistake. I was not using the square, and that is why the calculations were going wrong. Here also you have to use all squares. Okay? Okay, can I explain again? The variance is less, project acceptability is good. Yes, very good. See, the thing is, Abhishek, what I was trying to say is that supposing we had got two numbers. I said that supposing in a country there are two people, one has got an income of rupees 10 and another has got an income of rupees 100. Now, if we want to see that what is the average income in this country, we will add 10 plus 100 divided by 2. We say 55 rupees is the average income in this country. We have another country where there are two people, one has got 50 rupees of income, another has got 60 rupees of income. We will say the average income of the people in this country is 55 again. But then the two countries do not show the same picture. So what is the difference? Because the average income being the same, we're not convinced, right, that in one country there is so much of disparity, and in another country there isn't any kind of a disparity, and I think internet connection is not permitting the video to go. So audio is also not there. I think I'm clearly audible. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Now can you hear me? Because now the connectivity is improved. Okay. So what I was saying is that supposing as yes. So I hope the point was clear that there are two countries and both the countries have got average income of rupees 55, but the numbers are different, right? So we want to see as to why even in spite of having the same average income, in one country there are people who are poor, in another country they aren't. So we have to look at the variance of the numbers, right? Variance within the numbers. In order to find out variance, what we do, we multiply each particular data set. We try to find out the difference of the data from the mean. So 10 minus 55 ka square plus 100 minus 55 ka square divided by the total numbers in the calculation, right? So that is what we did. 10 minus 55 is 45. 100 minus 55 is again 45. So 45 square plus 45 square divided by 2. So we found out that the variance in the first case is 2025. And the standard deviation is square root of variance. So when we did the square root of variance, we found the standard deviation in the first case is 45. When we did the similar calculations for second country, we found that the standard deviation was 10. So it's very clear that because the standard deviation is higher in case of country A, the risk is more. The risk means that the data is not very reliable, right? But because the standard deviation is lower in case of the second country, we would say that that we are very close to the average. The income of the people is very close to the average. But in the first case, we will not say that the income of the people is very close to average. Are you now able to follow, Abhishek? The risk is less. So similarly in this particular question, we will try to find out, because here the initial investment is same, the period of investment is same, the expected cash flows is also coming as same. So now we have to look at it from the risk perspective. In order to look at the risk perspectives, we have to find out the variance. Now wherever the probability is given, the formula changes slightly. We will not use x minus x bar divided by n. What we will do, if the probabilities would have been given to us, like in this particular case, the average is 34. So what we would have done, it would be 8 minus 34 ka square multiplied by its probability, 0.2. As we had done for the purpose of calculation of average, similarly for the purpose of calculation of standard deviation also, we will have to multiply it with the probabilities. Here 12 minus 34 the square multiplied by its probability, which is 0.4, right? So here also what we do, we multiply the probability with x minus x bar. Now x is here 6 lakhs, x bar is 4 lakhs. So 6 minus 4 ka square, that is 2 lakhs. 2 lakhs ka square multiplied by 30%. Here 4 lakhs minus 4 lakhs is 0. So the entire calculation becomes 0. 2 lakhs minus 4 lakhs ka square multiplied by 30% again becomes 24 crore, I think. Now you have to find out standard deviation. So you have to find out the square root of the variance to find out standard deviation. In the first case, the standard deviation is 1,54,919. So in different situations, the cash flows can deviate by 1,54,919. But in the second situation, the standard deviation is 77,460. So if the situations become even worse, the standard deviation of the cash flows will deviate by 77,460. So that means that we would like to go for that particular project where the standard deviation is lower. So when we recommend, we say that since the net present value of both the projects is same, the decision will be taken on the basis of standard deviation. Here project B would be accepted because it has got a lower standard deviation, which is less risky as compared to project A. So have you got it? Have you got the point? Yep. So this is how the concept of standard deviation, and this concept of standard deviation is something which we are going to use invariably across this subject. So it should be very well prepared and very well understood by you. We are going to use it in a very great detail in this particular subject. Because whenever we would be talking about risk, we would be using the concept of standard deviation. Fine? So today we just extended the class for some time. I hope you're not that tired. So we take a break now and we would be continuing with the risk perspectives further. I have given you some overview about the risk. I would give you some more maybe in half a class in the next class, and then we move to the next topic, which is going to be capital structure, I believe. So with this, good night to all of you. See you in the next class, which would be on Monday, but before that I'll be seeing you in the exam preparatory on this Saturday. I have already given the suggestions in the initial class. Abhishek, I have already recommended Khan and Jain, I am Pandey for practice. because they contain a lot of questions. I've also suggested JP Gupta, which is also a book, which is also a very good book, but it has got slightly higher level questions. So any book which is available with you, you can, and to begin with, you can even start with study material and the practice manual, and then at the same time, if you can get access to the books, it will be good, right? So with this, good night to all of you. Take care.